In this first scene, Holden Leroy and Rayfield Town staff members with student helpers unloading baggage from a boat moored at the Forest Service float at the waterfront downtown and hauling it up to the campus. In those days, the only way we had to bring students was on the small fishing boats or the Princeton, which was the boat servicing Alaska Presbytery. Here we have the Sage building, a shop building, and there's the old Presbyterian Church on a site where the Stratton Library is now. The playground out in front of Fraser and Whitmore Hall dormitories. This is a scene showing there in the center, Allen Auditorium, the main school building, the light building, the gymnasium we built in 1934, having the first full-sized basketball court in Sitka. We're on our way to afternoon classes and work assignments. Stevenson Hall, practice house, and Pittsburgh House, which was the home of my family for some 22 years. Nurse Lewis at the hospital coming to meet her assistant for the afternoon, Verlie Imhoff. In those days, the health program was a very important part of our school program. Roland Wooster, who followed me as the second president of Sheldon Jackson in 1952. Here we are coming to morning chapel. Every morning, 5 mornings a week, we had chapel, 8 o'clock till 8:30. Mostly the staff members took the leading part in turn, but real often, and especially when we got the student officers, the student chapels, students led our chapel services every Friday morning. These are the fellows from HMH, Home Mission Monthly Hall, it was called then. Little George Hamilton there. And here we are over in practice house with the supervisor at the table. The girls there, all of the older girls in the course of the year got intensive training in housekeeping. This is field day, an annual event early in the spring. If the day happened to be a good day, we started out with a small crowd in the morning. There's Margaret Hope. Margaret McVeigh today lives here in Sitka. As the day progressed, the crowd grew as people in town got the word that field day was on out at SJ. Lincoln Street was our 440 and 220-yard dash. The 100-yard dash was up on the campus. Now this is a group of graduates. That year, I think it was 35. I'm not too sure of the year, though. Here's the Beachcombed Sawmill from 1934 to 1936. We literally beachcombed that little mill. And here is the first raft of logs tied out to the dolphins with one of our lads bringing in a log, the first to be run over the saw. As it is cut by hand, it is drawn up, and we'll see it as it goes over the saw. Then we'll see operating the saw was Peter Simpson. By the way, the big log haul that's pulling that log up was used by Governor Brady and his sawmill down in the location of the far boat harbor at the far end. Here's Peter running that first log over the saw. A very exciting morning when that happened. These first logs were being cut for rebuilding the flumes on the hydro ditch, bringing water from Indian River Dam. We were 3 years building this little mill and assembling it before this operation was possible. In those years, we had little thought for environmental concerns. The sawdust floated out on every tide from under the mill. Here is Ernest Johnson of Cake, engineer on the job. The mill was powered by a 25-horse Fairbanks Y heavy-duty diesel. This first lumber was stacked up. Peter Simpson had a list to cut by, which Herbert Gregg had made out for him for the replacement of worn-out flumes on the water ditch. Now we jump ahead to the summertime. That's Mr. Gregg on the right. And the man on the left is Charlie Stewart. Herbert Gregg was the carpenter. There's Peter Simpson. The first flume is finished and the water's turned on. Charlie Stewart, Herbert Gregg, and Peter Simpson there. Now we're up surveying the second flume, which has to be replaced. This is an overexposed color film. By the way, all of these pictures were just plain amateur. I had my camera that year from the New York office. Frederick Thorne, Dr. Frederick Thorne, in charge of audiovisual back there, had offered the 16 millimeter Bell and Howell camera, and I was interested. This is the building of that second flume now. The girls all got in the act coming up with lunch, and it was a welcome break for the fellows that worked so hard that day building this flume. Everything was prepared. The flume went in one day, and we were all happy to keep that water coming down to the hydro, for so much depended on the electricity from that plant in the operation of the school program. Heading down after the day's work, all of us happy. That's Charlie Stewart, engineer on our staff for 20-odd years. R.S. Town, general worker, and next to him, Jesse Whitmire. This is quite a story back of that. We've been up in the wintertime, clear up Indian River to a swamp where Peter Singh, Isabel Brady's father, had located a bullpine for the keelson, I should say, of a boat which her grandfather, Peter Simpson, was building for us. The big log with lots of helpers came down easy, and yet it was a disappointment as Peter Simpson had to condemn it. It didn't measure up to his specifications. This is the building of the SJS, a 49-foot seine boat, which Peter Simpson put together from plans which he drew himself and materials which were all cut in our little mill. Those planks are from Jap squares above the water line, and spruce was used below the water line. The boat's getting pretty well along now, coming up for launching time. That wheel has to be just right before it goes in the water. There's the scene the morning after the launching in May of 1936. The hull riding gracefully at anchor. What a beautiful morning that was, and what an exciting morning. The boat there at the right was the Idaho, another boat which Charlie Stewart and I happened to purchase as a wreck, a derelict on the beach, and rebuilt it. The SJS hull has been down on the waterfront for the construction of the superstructure and installation of the engine. Here she is on her first run away from the dock. How excited we were to have our own boat. And by the way, that was the first boat in the Sitka area with a modern high-speed diesel. Here we are headed for the cannery in Sitka Bay, the New England Fish Company, where the SJS fished that first season. This is a scene in Sturgis Narrows in Peril Straits, bucking the current. The work of finishing up has been completed at the New England Cannery in Sitka Bay, and our good boat is off for the fishing grounds. Howard Gray of Hoona was the first skipper. Unfortunately, that year, the fishing was poor, and our catch was very small. This is back in Sitka in the wintertime, as you'll recognize, and we're on our way just up through Olga and Neva Straits to John the Baptist Bay, where we turned around and came back home. I should mention that this was the first time we had a real ride on our own boat. She came back from the cannery with her brand new clutch all burned out. The crew made a record run from the New England Cannery to Sitka at a cost of burning up the clutch, and there we were with our brand new boat tied up. We couldn't use it until this time when we see the winter scenes. Beautiful Sitka scenes in the wintertime. A rather poor pan of Sitka waterfront from the campus. Sorry, I was an amateur and overexposed all that. Now we're down at the Pyramid packing plant. This is Lawrence Freeburn, superintendent, and he was a friend of ours. We had gone out. Andrew Hope, skipper of our boat fishing for the cannery, had gone out under a special permit from the Fish Commission. We had taken these fish after the season. The workers in the cannery came back an extra day to can them. And this would be about 1939. I think that's Mr. James pulling away from the SJ. He has had a number of chum salmon picked out of the mixed catch of fish in the hold. He's taking them home to smoke. All of those fish made 3 truckloads for our SJ truck, 1 for SJ, and 2 truckloads which were distributed around Sitka. All of this work is donated by the people who are going to get some of that canned salmon for winter use with their families. In this total operation of canning that fish, there were no dollars that changed hands. I've long forgotten how many cases Lawrence Freeburn charged us for the cans, but he didn't charge us anything for the operation or for any of his men. Now we're back in the Sheldon Jackson boat shop, and that was Peter Simpson and one of his beautiful round-bottom, double-end rowboats. It was very fascinating to me to watch the little boat take shape. And here it is, finished and on the deck of the SJS. We're traveling, I think, to Imperial Straits on the way to Presbyterian. It's a beautiful spring day. As we travel along in this scene, I think we're going up to Haines, and we've been up to Haines and back down. That was Charlie Stewart, Ernest Johnson, and I took at times my turn at the wheel. What good times we had on trips to Presbyterian. We had plenty of time between ports for lots of storytelling, lots of good fellowship. There's a porpoise playing off the bow. They're very fast and can outrun any of our ships. We like to watch them, and they were so fast it's hard to get a good clear shot of them. Oh yes, now we're coming into Haines, I think. Getting close to Haines. I'm attempting to narrate this. It's March 27th today, and it's been many years since I traveled around Some of the places are familiar, yet not too clear in memory. There's Ernest Johnson again. And after a very short stop just to pick up the people at Haines, we were on our way again back down the Lynn Canal, headed for Angoon. Vern Swanson, George Beck, Patty Goodette, an elder from Cluckwan, Andrew Wanamaker, other people attending Presbytery, and that's the boardwalk at Angoon, about 1936, 38, along in there. I guess that's Patty Goodette, yes, from Cluckwan. More of the delegates, more scenes of the boardwalk in Angoon, George Beck again, and the church at Angoon. That's still there. Reverend Bromley at the pulpit. Scenes of Angoon. The waterfront at Angoon, from the Chatham Bay side. Peter Simpson back at Sitka. Peter was really a staff member with us during his late years. Frank Price, Jesse Price, and their family. Jesse Price was one of the first graduate of the Sheldon Jackson High School in 1921. Reverend Webster coming into Easter Day service. Short service, here we are coming out. Nick Casacan and Rachel, his wife, their little babe. My Sunday school class that year. The seagulls can't get out on that beach today, as that's taken over by the small boat harbor. Campus scenes again. Miss Sidebotham and her girls of Stevenson Hall, and Laura Adams, her girls of North Pacific Hall. Paul Edwards, he's very proud of that SJ. There were a number of them given back in the 30s and 40s. The student officers had designed that, and they drew up the rules that the committee went by in awarding them. On a blue sweater, they were very attractive and very much coveted by those who were fortunate enough to get them. Small group of the staff members. I think in those years we had 35. Here is the ruins of our little Beachcombed Sawmill after a disastrous fire. And here we are building the new sawmill, which is still standing, used as storehouse, about half of it, and the other half for the fisheries program. Putting the purlins in place on the roof. Student workers under Andrew Hope's direction, Cyril George of Angoon, there's Andrew Hope. He was the builder on the job. This is Peter Simpson smoothing out a rough timber. There's the completed little mill. The building still stands down there, very much worn after all these years. And only recently, many loads of gravel and rock have been hauled in to safeguard the building from being destroyed by a high tide in a storm like we had at Thanksgiving time a year ago.